Chag Sameach. This is the morning after the holiday of Shavuot, where I just spent all night doing Torah study and prayers and rituals through the Kabbalah Center to connect with the energy of the holiday. So the light of the Creator comes down and gives us the Torah and comes down to meet those who prepare themselves ahead of time and then make themselves available during that period. So I haven't had a lot of sleep, but I feel really great, and it was really wonderful, and I can't wait to go back and listen to more of the replays of the teachers, because after the initial ritual connections, then there is like a late night Torah Zohar study, and so each several teachers go up and give a lecture on some focus of their choosing, and so that was really, really cool. Which it also brought up a couple of questions, I guess, or maybe it was like one question that was sort of like a two-part complex question that had come up in the comments about acceptance and judgment and forgiveness, and kind of being able to like navigate and discern through those, being able to identify where you're at and what's what, and they went into those specific issues, and so I think that's so amazing. So my hope is to be able to somehow record these lectures, or somehow take a bunch of notes to keep the ideas that I need, the points that I need to remember to include in maybe a video or a couple of videos that would address that subject. So thank you for that question. That's really great. That's the kind of questions I love, those questions that sort of like prompt a video answer, right? Through oh, this is the thing that confuses me and has me tripped up in life. Like, I never can identify this from this, or, those kinds of things are really helpful, and they let me know what you guys need topics covered on. So that's so super cool. So our romance oracle reading from last night was totally in alignment with the symbolism, the language, and the truth and the reality of what's going on during Shavuot, which is God, the masculine the king coming together with his bride and presenting her, the queen, the Torah, to his people. And so it was just really, really cool to see how the romance reading went into the narrative of the romance between God and the Torah and his people, beloved, and how that kind of aligned with our own individual romance path as well. So that was last night's video, so that was really cool. So if you haven't seen it, it's worth watching. So let's get into the reading. So from the Radiant Sun Oracle, we've got empathy, which is the moon in Pisces. Whoopsie. Chaos. Followed by Saturn in Aquarius, which is eccentricity. We have appreciation, which is the moon in Leo. And we have harmony, which is the sun in Libra. Underneath empathy, which is moon in Pisces, we have Three of Swords. Underneath Saturn in Aquarius, we have Knight of Wands. Underneath the moon in Leo, we have Six of Cups. And underneath Sun in Libra, we have Seven of Wands. All right, I'm going to let y'all listen to the audio. I think that lays the scene out nicely, and then we'll come back and get more into the specific cards. The patterns are rising like tough grease. But we've been scrubbing away at codependency, enmeshment, childhood trauma, defense mechanisms, and low-level trauma responses that have been holding us back. These subconscious struggles have drained us of so much energy and focus. And now that we see them clearly, we can repair them. We're coming to a point where it's not even worth trying this hard for the sake of receiving for the self alone. And that's good. It means the vessel is now emptied of the lesser fulfillment and has now activated the desire for the higher fulfillment that comes from the desire to receive for the sake of sharing. We understand that the light we are given comes from the Creator and the Creator alone. And we are bestowed our blessings to be stewards of them for the good of creation. We're beginning to understand that when we unify in peace, harmony, love, sharing, and solidarity, we unify with God, and through that unified force, we can achieve and overcome anything. When we conquer our adversary within, we are equipped to conquer the manifestations of the adversary without. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. When we bear affinity with the Christ through our consciousness, it is only then can we bear affinity with Christ through our actions. So the whole point of Shavuot, or the period leading up to it, is that the Israelites are purging, and remember, the Israelites are the representatives of all the souls of mankind, our collective souls, where we came from. And like theoretically, we were all there. We were all part of that group. And so it represents the journey from the parting of the Red Sea to Mount Sinai is a journey of purging and cleansing and shedding and dying to the layers of the ego, of the reactive evil inclination, of the selfish inclination, of the animalistic sort of survival instincts or, drives, and having rising above, elevating above that, transcending those impulses, those lower human impulses, and embodying a higher consciousness that bears affinity with the light of the Creator. That's not the effect, but rather the cause. And that is not in a path of destruction and a consciousness of destruction, but a consciousness of creation. So then it's like we come to a point where we realize in the desert, in this time of not abundance, right? There's not any vegetation. There's not any guarantees or promises. There's no rest in the desert. There's no way to really clean anything well because there's no water, and you're exposed, and there's not any respite, and there's not any refreshment, and there's not really much, anything that's nurturing. Even the cactuses are, all prickly and hard and hard to get to, and are painful to get to the resource within, So the desert is harsh conditions where we don't own anything. We possess nothing, and everything that comes to us we realize, anything that's going to come to me is going to come from the Creator. I don't really I can do, try as hard as I can, try as I might, but anything that I get is given to me from the Creator so that I can steward that on behalf of others, to share with others. So we get to a point in that self-emptying of the ego where we're struggling so much, where we're looking around, and this is happening en masse right now with all the amount of work that we have to do to struggle to make ends meet. The opulence that we were taught to adore and to strive to has become grotesque and repulsive, and we're kind of going back to a simpler okay, maybe I don't need so much then. It's not worth killing myself over to attain these things. If it's just for the sake of receiving for myself alone, it's not even worth it. It's not even worth the effort. But so then we sort of die, the hero dies, but in a positive way, because then we've emptied the vessel of being sated on the lesser fulfillment. And then from there, if it's a true gift, a true calling that really is like a need, like it meets a need for others and it has a higher purpose and it's like part of, a divine plan for you, then you'll have like this resurrection of desire, because you're like, no, people need this. Like, and I need to give this in a unique way, and I need to share this. And it's not just for the sake of myself, but others actually as well. So then you're impressed with an urgency of service and sharing and repair, rather than receiving and attaining and owning and hoarding. Like, nothing's mine. I am just a channel. I'm a steward. I'm given the stewardship over a trust fund, and I need to divvy these resources out, my money, my time, my attention, my genius, my creativity, whatever that is for each of us. I need to divvy that out in a way that the Creator has directed me to, because I have a special assignment and a special purpose here, right? That only I can perform, and only each of us can perform, right? Somebody at the Kabbalah Center brought up this idea the other day, the statement somebody made, and I wish I could quote it from the direct person, but they were like, that your birthday is so important that it was like some rabbi, I think, like maybe like from another time or a while back, but that your birthday is so important that that's the day the Creator decided that the world could no longer exist without you. Like, we really should, pay attention to the preciousness of our birthdays. So, and the intention of the exact moment, that we were born. So we go through this period of challenge to purge, to cleanse ourselves of the egoic purpose and drive and desire. And then we transcend those egoic impulses because the bait doesn't work anymore. The carrot no longer looks appealing. So we end up following the Creator's carrot. And that is emboldening and strengthening. And when we align our desires and our attributes and our consciousness with that of the Creator, then we can unify with the Creator's force, and it can move through us. And so that's how, by purging ourselves, that is what attunes our vessel to channel this miraculous light and miracles. So, having said that, we're shedding all of these parts of our nature, if we can, if we can, become aware of them, and we can choose to dismantle these reflexes and patterns, then we can overcome our self-defeating tendencies that hold us back and align with our higher destiny, our higher path, right? We can't really take on the adversary out in the world with our solution to these world issues for mankind if we haven't beat the adversary within ourselves that's tripping us on our own shoelaces. So we must overcome and overpower and master the adversary within, so that we can then be equipped to overcome and master the adversary without. So part of what we are noticing is a sort of salad bar of issues, things that were a collection of tools in a toolbox that sprang from early childhood conditioning and early childhood trauma and early patterns that we watched with the people around us, right? That were when we were impressionable. And so we take on and then also beliefs that we were given, or beliefs that we were developed unconsciously. And so all of these responses sit in our subconscious, and they're constantly driving our actions and our reactions and our perspective and our, programming and, okay, initiate this application, kind of thing. And so on top of that, our nervous system is also kind of slipping into low-level trauma responses like fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And so that's draining a lot of our energy and focus, so that every time we start to become productive or take an action or get some momentum, it's like our nervous system trips up our nervous system. It's like having a motion detector in your yard that turns the floodlights on. So every time that motion detector feels like something's there that's not usually there, that something's off, it triggers the floodlight, right? So that's like your nervous system being in circumstances it's not used to, sometimes good circumstances, right? A lot of times that's the case. It's like, oh, things are getting better. Oh, I'm not used to this. Trigger trauma response to self-sabotage back to the status quo that I know, that I can navigate, that I can help this body survive in, and that I'm comfortable with, right? So dismantling these different pieces of this has been part of the journey, because some of it is childhood trauma, and that trauma it's on a spectrum, right? When our nervous system is taking in something that's more than we have the capacity to handle, which is, it can be a hair trigger for a child who everything feels so much more magnified, and you're so much more tender and impressionable and easily galvanized, right? So a lot of things could cause certain moments of trauma for us on different levels, different, spectrums, right? So that those little moments that seem just like embarrassing memories could have actually programmed like a defense mechanism to avoid certain situations that were similar to that again, which holds you back in life, right? And it wasn't just some big obvious event like my dad was an alcoholic and he would tear up the house. It's not always that obvious, right? It's almost more helpful when it is, because it's easier to see that make the connection sometimes. So not that that's easier to go through, it's just easier to recognize when the root of certain trauma responses, some of those like ones that we would shrug off are more well hidden, right? So these two cards together, the moon in Pisces, this card has to do with like healing codependency and enmeshment issues and setting stronger boundaries, right? Because what do we know about like Pisces is the most open, vulnerable, empathic of the water signs, and the most, like the one that has the most desire to serve others, wants to please others, wants to help others, has a desire to share. The thing about Pisces barely has any vessel to receive for the self alone. They only want to share with other people. And a lot of times that holds them back because it doesn't make them ambitious enough, selfish enough to get the ball rolling, right? So Pisces, a lot of times, or this kind of energy, this moon in Pisces, it describes a person who is feeling so empathic for other people that they prioritize everyone else's needs and go into like a fixing, cushioning, managing everyone, enmeshed, people pleasing, like responsible for everyone's feelings and being the one that carries the emotional burden and weight and spiritual burden and weight of everyone around you. And then the Pisces end up feeling burnt out, and they lose themselves in the process, and they get lost in this illusion. And like Cancer, like I have a Cancer moon, and that's been with a Libra rising. So that's been one of the biggest things in my life, is to learn how to set those energetic boundaries and those personal emotional boundaries and all of that. But I think dismantling where that enmeshment and those patterns themselves, the experiences themselves, those root experiences caused a lot of pain and heartache and disappointment. And as we come to terms with the truth and reality around those things, as we grow older and we have perspective, it can give us the ability to get to perspective and forgiveness and appreciation for what came on the other side of it. But it also is kind of like another level of heartbreak in those realizations, and grieving, like another level of truth that you didn't even realize, like, oh, I didn't even know it should have hurt that bad, kind of thing. So it's always cyclical, but so those root experiences, but then we realize, okay, because of those root experiences, then I developed these patterns and armor or lack of armor that ended up causing me a lot more heartbreak and a lot more loss and a lot more disappointment over the years. And so I think we're starting to realize and make the connection, right? But I think that the more we can feel and feel honestly and face the truth of a situation, that kind of acceptance, not accepting bad treatment to yourself and just dealing with it. It's accepting the truth of a situation instead of trying to bend it and shape it to be something palatable. It's like sometimes we need to see the cold, hard, ugly truth of the situation, right? So seeing that truth. And then this card, Saturn in Aquarius, with the Knight of Wands. So one of the levels of trauma response, one of the kind of expressions of the trauma response is to have like a short attention span or be easily distracted or have a hard time committing to something, whether it be a project or a person or a job, like in the micro to macro, right? This is the shiny object syndrome. And so the Knight of Wands is the one who has got all this passion and energy to go in and take action. But the shortcomings of the Knight of Wands is that he hasn't learned to discipline his energy yet to make it consistent and continuous and perseverant. So the Knight of Wands doesn't have the physical discipline or the inner discipline or the emotional discipline or the discipline of mentality and consciousness and thought and mind to sit with something and to stick with something past the initial point of inspiration and novelty and excitement. They can easily get distracted. Now, this is also a case of like when you're sitting down and you're having your nervous system's dysregulated and you have a tendency to go into a default trauma response of flight, then you might sit down to try to do some work and you keep going into like a trance, into like maladaptive imagination world where you've lived 1,000 lives and you're like, damn it, I burnt so much time just then and I needed to be focused on doing the task at hand. Or like even when you do the task at hand, it's like it keeps sending you on wild goose chases and it's like you still can't seem to be fruitful, right? You can have a tendency to get lost in distracting activities that are fun but are kind of escapism and take you away from doing what's important or what matters. So I think that we're seeing, okay, we're ready to be mature and overcome these like night-like lack of discipline tendencies. And Saturn is like, hey, you're burning daylight. Like there are important things that you need to focus on, and your talents and your unique offerings are needed, or your attention is needed by your soul, and you're not focusing on what's important. And it's not even just for the sake of your own well-being and fulfillment, but also it's for the sake of the collective, the greater good, the greater well-being, the greater fulfillment, the greater correction. So it's not just for the sake of you, but it's also for the sake of sharing with others too, right? You know, if we're so meek and mild that we're like, oh, little old me, I can just survive and accept just scraps for myself and, sit idle and watch my life go by, just kind of appeased in sort of a low-level acceptance and low-level satisfaction and contentment and complacency, but that causes me to miss out on the full expression of my soul, right? It's like we can't need that so much that we have this lust for that kind of validation, but also the less we do, the less we have to share with others, right? It's not like we need to go out and try to be millionaires for the sake of like gaining for ourselves. But if you had a lot of money, you could do a lot of like really like impactful things with your money if you chose to. If you had, something that you made, it's like that could make a really positive impact, right? But if you don't allow your vision or your dream to be big enough, you may not align with your true destiny because you stop short of the bigger vision, of the bigger picture, right? And that could be for a lot of reasons, right? Running out of gas because we kept driving around in the wrong direction, right? So we kind of have to stay on top of ourselves about, pruning the garden and keeping our focus and our energy renewed in our discipline, right? To to give and to serve, not just for the self, but for our higher purpose. And I think that renews our energy, and it renews our sense of urgency, because it's not just for ourselves, because we lose the inspiration to do that. It just becomes too exhausting. It's a hamster wheel. It's burnout. But when we're putting our life force into a cause that's generating more creation and more life into creation, then that is clean, renewable energy, right? So appreciation. So the flow of abundance can yield abundant gifts to share with others, right? I remember having worked with Trisha Yearwood several times over the years when I was in production, over the course of like several weeks each time. And so her and Garth would be, around all the time. And I just got to know them as such generous people who were absolutely so giving and never held back anything ever. And like monetary, like research, whatever they had, they were always just giving. And they are one of the biggest names in, country music, like legend, Hall of Fame kind of thing, and materially blessed as well, right? So they have used their wealth and their position and their talents generally for good. Like I can't say a bad thing about either one of them. They're really genuinely like wonderful, wonderful individuals. So again, if we dream too small, then we're shrinking our vessel, right? So I think it's like with that renewed sense of purpose and perspective about what it is that we are here to do and share and give and why, and it's so much more motivating. And I think it renews our childlike innocence and naivete in a good way. And we have that childlike optimism and hope and wonder and inspiration and curiosity and creativity again. So it's really, and it's so interesting that it's like the moon in Leo. Well, Leo is the house of fun and play and adventure and, being emboldened and, putting yourself out there and also taking up, defending what's right and what's just and defending the underdog. And so I think that's, what drives children's wonderment, isn't it? Is that they want fun, adventure. They love a hero that comes and saves the underdog, or that is the underdog that becomes the hero. Like they have optimism about what's possible for the future. So I think that we're really getting back into that childhood spirit of excitement and hope and optimism, but because of the sake of doing it for the Creator, we now understand like the Creator's gonna have our back. The challenge is the illusion. It's the part of the script that makes it all the more exciting, right? And so then finally, the Libra card here, the Sun in Libra and Seven of Wands. So for the sake of the highest good of all, for the sake of harmony and unity and Mashiach energy of everyone having enough, the peace and fulfillment and well-being on earth, returning to that Pardes, that paradise, that the Garden of Eden, right? And knowing that when we align and we balance our inner, attributes, we also bear more affinity with the light of the Creator, and that allows us to draw closer in union with the light, and then therefore able to channel through and unify with that force to help overcome the challenges and to be victorious over not only our inner demons and adversaries, but the challenges that the world brings us in the manifested form of the energy of those inner demons, right? So it always delivers to you exactly what is like the most annoying, the most hardest thing for you. It's like your outer adversaries and your challenges in life are like couture designed to press your specific buttons. And we're seeing that, and we have like this energy to forge through and overcome and handle anything that's happening and forge through and continue to carve the path forward. All right, that is all for tonight, you all. I will see you on the next one. More than likely, it will be Secret Teachings of Jesus tomorrow night, where we will pick up with that part 2 from last week or week before last. All right, until then, peace.